Welcome to JOGG Deep Dive, where we explore the stories behind the headlines.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're really digging into something complex, a story that's just fascinating. It sits right at the intersection of, ancient tradition, modern law, and community heritage.
Yeah, it really does.
We're diving into the Dharmasthala Temple case. It's a real challenge, I think, to how we view things like faith, property, and public trust.
Absolutely. And our mission today really is to get past the sort of surface level and explore how these centuries-old practices are bumping up against modern demands for accountability.
Yeah.
You give us some great sources, and we'll unpack this really unique story, a Jain family overseeing a major Hindu shrine.
Right.
And all the critical questions that pop up when you mix property, power, and, frankly, immense responsibility.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit for everyone. We're heading to the beautiful green hills of Karnataka in South India. That's where you find Dharmasthala, a pilgrimage town really steeped in spiritual reverence. Mm-hmm. At its core, it's a Shiva temple. Lord Manjunatha is the main deity. But here's the twist. The thing that makes Dharmasthala so different and such a compelling case study for, over 800 years?
Yeah, over 800 years. It's quite something.
While Hindu Brahmin priests handle the rituals, the entire administration, the running of the place, basically is managed by a Jain family, the Heggades.
It's an arrangement that, when you really stop and think about it, it's pretty extraordinary. This level of sustained interfaith cooperation, working together, it's historically drawn a lot of admiration. A real symbol of unity, you could say.
Yeah. Definitely.
And there's this hereditary title, Dharmadhikari. It means protector of Dharma, essentially. It's passed down in the Heggade family. The current Dharmadhikari, D. Virendra Heggade, he's a major figure, not just spiritually, but known widely for philanthropy, community work.
And their influence, it goes way beyond just the worship aspect, doesn't it? It's not just about the temple itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Under the Heggades, the temple has grown into this huge center for, education, social reform, rural development. They've built this incredible legacy of public service.
It's massive. The temple's reach is just so comprehensive. Its influence isn't limited to faith. It really weaves through the whole region's social fabric. So much so that for many people, it almost acts like a civic institution, providing essential services way beyond just religious offerings.
But I suppose as Dharmasthala's influence got bigger and bigger, so did the scrutiny, right? Bringing these, maybe uncomfortable questions that started to challenge the very basis of how it's run. This is where the legal side starts to creep in.
Exactly. That's the turning point.
So what were the main things people were concerned about? What brought on this scrutiny?
Well, the core questions really boiled down to maybe three main things. First, who actually owns the huge amounts of land connected to the temple?
Okay.
Second, the transparency or maybe the perceived lack of transparency in its finances, which are, considerable. And third, just the sheer extent of this hereditary control held by the Heggade family. It really forced this fundamental legal question. Is Dharmasthala a public religious institution, which should probably fall under state regulation? Or is it essentially a private trust run by a family with inherent religious rights to manage it?
And people didn't just ask the question, they took action. You mentioned petitions, PILs.
That's right. Various petitions and public interest litigations, PILs, were filed. These are legal challenges brought by citizens, often for the public good, trying to get clarity on precisely this issue.
And the scale involved. You mentioned the land and donations. Can you give us a sense of how big we're talking?
It's truly vast. We're talking thousands upon thousands of acres of land associated with the temple. And the donations it receives every year are, immense. So for the legal activists pushing for state supervision, it boils down to a fundamental issue of public trust and accountability.
Makes sense.
Their argument is basically, look, if any institution, religious or not, is handling this much wealth and land, there ought to be some clear system of checks and balances. Like you'd expect for any other public body.
Rather than just relying on the goodwill of one family, however long-standing.
Precisely. They believe state oversight is crucial to guarantee that the wealth is used strictly for its stated religious and charitable aims, not just subject to the unchecked decisions of hereditary trustees.
That's a strong case for oversight. But the Heggade family, they obviously have their own perspective built on centuries of tradition. How do they respond to that? What's their defense?
Their defense is deeply rooted in Dharma, that sort of guiding principle of righteous conduct, moral duty. They argue their service comes from that place, not from any desire for personal profit. Mm-hmm. They make a point of saying they've never taken a salary, that they've served devotees for generations without any political motivation or personal agenda. For them, it's about this unwavering, selfless devotion passed down through their family line.
So this case, it feels like it's much bigger than just Dharmasthala itself, doesn't it? It seems to tap into this wider, ongoing debate across India about how religious institutions should be governed in the modern era.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely not happening in a vacuum. The Dharmasthala situation mirrors tensions we see elsewhere in India. You know, that friction between traditional ways of running religious places and the framework of modern law.
Like where else? Are there other prominent examples?
Sure. Think about the Sabarimala Temple down in Kerala, or the Jagannath Temple in Odisha. Both have faced really similar kinds of scrutiny over their management practices. And what often adds fuel to the fire is this regulatory disparity, people point out.
What do you mean by disparity?
Well, in many Indian states, Hindu temples often fall under the regulation of government-appointed boards. But typically, churches and mosques remain outside that kind of direct state control. And that difference, well, it frequently sparks pretty heated public debate, sometimes accusations of unfairness or bias.
Okay, so looking ahead then, what happens if the courts eventually decide in favor of government regulation for Dharmasthala? What kind of precedent would that set?
That could be huge. If the courts lean towards state regulation, it could set a really significant precedent. We're potentially talking about something that could deeply impact hundreds of temples, certainly across Karnataka, maybe even further afield. Especially those currently run by hereditary families or trusts. It would really shift the legal landscape for these ancient institutions.
But what if it goes the other way? If the ruling supports the Heggade family's private hereditary control, does the conversation just stop there?
Not necessarily. No, I don't think so. A ruling favoring private control would likely just intensify discussions about other ways to ensure transparency and accountability. You know, how can temple management be inclusive? How can these institutions maintain public trust in their unique heritage without direct state intervention? It really opens up another set of important questions.
So, when we try to weave all this together, the tradition, the law, the public service, what are the deeper questions this Dharmasthala case pushes us, the listeners, you and me, to think about? What's the bigger picture here?
Yeah, this case really forces some fundamental ethical reflections, I think. Like, who should ultimately be in charge of these sacred spaces, places that serve millions of people and, let's be honest, command enormous wealth?
Right.
Can these centuries-old traditions genuinely adapt?
Sure.
Can they evolve within a modern world without losing their essence, their soul, some might say?
That's a tough one.
And maybe the trickiest part. Where exactly do you draw the line between personal devotion, which is clearly present here, and public duty, especially when these institutions hold so much communal wealth and influence?
It's definitely important to acknowledge, though, isn't it, that by most accounts, Dharmasthala Temple is run incredibly well.
Oh, undeniably.
Thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people benefit hugely from all its charitable work, education, healthcare, you name it. The positive impact is clear.
Absolutely clear. But, despite that operational success, the case still throws up this core democratic dilemma. In a system where most public institutions face some kind of oversight, some accountability, should religious institutions be the exception? And that brings us, I think, to the central, still unanswered question. Is faith ultimately best protected by sticking firmly to tradition? Or does its protection in the modern world actually lie in applying modern law impartially? There are no easy answers here, obviously. But they're really critical questions we have to keep asking as society changes.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on the Dharmasthala Temple case, it's such a strong reminder, isn't it, that temples and similar religious institutions, there's so much more than just places people go to worship. There are these complex hubs, cultural, social, even legal institutions woven so deeply into the very fabric of society.
And the question of whether change is needed for places like this, or maybe whether it's not needed, that's going to be shaped by so many things moving forward. Court decisions, yes, but also what communities themselves need and want, and these ongoing conversations we're all having about these really vital topics.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really encourage you, the listener, to think about what aspects of this deep dive stood out most to you. How does this complex mix of faith, law, and power maybe resonate in other areas you see around you? Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and keep diving deep.